Welcome to Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County and our monthly Consumer Issues program. I'm Carol Fisher, Consumer and Food Safety Educator here at Cooperative Extension. Our topic today is consumer credit issues. The use of credit is a wonderful tool that we all have the ability to use. However, it is also one of the most complex issues of financial management as well. So we want to discuss some of the issues regarding our rights and responsibilities surrounding credit, what we can do to protect ourselves, how we can be wise consumers of credit, and what to do if something goes wrong or if you become a victim of identity theft or credit fraud. So today we have with us Assistant Attorney, New York State Attorney General Mike Danaher. We're pleased to have him with us to help us explore these issues and to learn more about consumer credit. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our consumer session. As Carol mentioned in her opening remarks, credit is a big issue as it relates to scams and frauds. So people need to be very careful about that. If you think about it, we're a very credit-based society now. It used to be that you always would buy things with cash and cash was king and all that. But I think with a number of factors, one is that the increase in cost of things over the years has gotten to be where we don't usually carry around the cash that we used to. Also, with the relatively easy way to get credit, we are less apt to be carrying that much cash around. And one of the fundamental things that we've talked about here at Cornell Cooperative Extension is that we're a very convenience-based society nowadays. And so how much more convenient is it to be able to just whip out this piece of plastic and stick it in a machine and either have the machine give us money, actual cash, or that we can buy things with just using our plastic nowadays. I mean, we see the technologies now that people in retail stores are carrying around mobile phones with, instead of having a ear jack slid into or listen to music or things, there are now devices where you can stick in the ear slot a credit card swipe machine. So they're just carrying around and just swiping away, and so it's become much more convenient for us to not have to be carrying around cash. And for that matter, it's so easy to get cash nowadays that we don't have to carry that much around with us because, especially with our younger people, I know it with my own children, they're using debit cards to buy things. So they're carrying their bank account around with them in their pocket. Same with credit cards. So we're becoming very credit oriented, and as a result, if we want to use those conveniences, we have to be really careful about protecting our credit, because how inconvenient will it be if all of a sudden something happens to our credit and we don't have that access to credit cards and things, and then it's a complete inconvenience. And this is even dated, it's 2 years ago. The outstanding consumer installment debt was almost $2.5 trillion throughout the United States, and it has gone up, and not to mention other types of debt such as mortgages and that sort of thing. So it's really exploded with the use, but we have to be very careful about it. Especially our younger people. We have to inform them, educate them on what credit actually is. And more younger people are getting into trouble because, hey, I just got this piece of plastic and I can just, there's no consequences. They don't realize that down the road that they have to pay all this back. And their other mindset is, hey, it's $35 a month. I can swing $35 a month working down at the pizza shop. Well, they don't realize that if they do it that way, that many times that $35 a month they will be paying for years and years and years in order to just pay off this one debt that they incurred to begin with. So credit gives us convenience. It's safety. We don't have to carry large amounts of cash around with us anymore. And it's available to protect us in the case of emergencies. An auto repair that needs to get done to be able to have the car fixed to go back to work, pay medical bills, may need, because they don't have the cash, they may need to use credit to travel, to go visit a sick relative or something like that. So it's really important to keep that in mind and to be very protective of our credit. Credit scams can be very difficult. They can be difficult to, one, identify when it's happening, and two, difficult to correct if you discover that you've been a victim of scam. Many times we don't know that it is a scam until the scam artists and everyone are long gone, and you can never find them to correct the problem. Many times we find out that there is a credit scam at the most inopportune times. The typical case where we find out that we've got loans that we don't know about or somehow we're scammed into, we don't find out about till one of two events occur. One is we go when we actually need credit, we want to buy a car, or we want to get store credit or something. And we find out that we get rejected. And you wonder, why is it that we get rejected? And you find out that there is all this credit against you that you didn't know anything about. So that's an inopportune time. And the other time is when we start getting the telephone calls from the collection agents saying, hey, how come you haven't paid this bill? And they can be very mean people when they're trying to collect these debts. And it's a debt that you never even knew that you had, because somebody may have committed a scam. And one of the biggest areas where scams occur in relation to credit is identity theft. It's by far the largest fraud surrounding credit, and we frequently take our credit for granted. It's always there, whatever. Assuming that it will always be there when we need it. And think about it. We get credit card applications all the time. I don't know about any of you out in the audience, but I frequently get voicemail messages on our home voicemail machine from this person who claims they can help us correct our, reduce the interest on our credit cards and that sort of thing. We don't think about it. It's kind of like life insurance. We don't really think much about credit until you absolutely need it. You don't think about life insurance until you absolutely need it. But we do need it. In this day and age with the cost of consumer products, which we used to think of as luxury items, have now evolved into being necessities. Cars are a necessity. Computers are evolving into necessity. We're purchasing homes. We can't pay cash for our homes. With the price of cars, many of us can't buy a car with cash anymore. So we have to be very careful about these sorts of things. So how does this identity thing happen? Well, we've become complicit in a lot of ways in assisting the identity thieves. Because of our we need this today mentality, we are giving up some of the protections that were always there when we were getting credit. People are applying for bank loans now online. People are buying things online. And in order to do that, for that convenience that we need, I mean, we don't have time to go to the bank. Come on now. Banks are only, you've always heard the banker's hours. We're just too busy. We can't get down to the bank at the time that the bank is open. So, when I'm finally available to make my loan application, may not be till 10 o'clock at night. And of course, the banks are helping us out with those sorts of things, because we now can go online and apply for loans, or we want to buy things, and we can go on at 2 o'clock in the morning if we want and have things bought and delivered. We're purchasing over the internet, we're purchasing over the phone and the television. We have ATM machines now, so you don't have to go to the bank before it closes to get cash. You can just go to a machine and have it spit money out at you. And as a result, in order to get those conveniences, we are becoming more comfortable in giving out our personal identification information to anonymous people over the internet, over the telephone. Social security numbers, credit card numbers, our dates of birth, our addresses, our telephone numbers, our mother's maiden name, our PINs and our passwords. We're giving out, and it's, I can remember back in the day. I'm now at that age where I can talk about back in the day, when the only way you could get cash was go to the bank while the bank was open, or that there wasn't such a thing as the internet. What was the internet? I have recollections in my youth of when we actually got cable television, which at that time was a miraculous 13 channels, because you used to only have 3. Now, as I've said this many times before, now we have 150 channels on basic cable, and there's still nothing good to watch. You always used to hear our parents tell us, why are you watching that crap on TV? And you say, well, there's nothing else to watch. Now we just have more of those channels when we say the same thing. So our young people are particularly vulnerable to this, because when you think about it, for our young people who are in college now, they can't remember ever having been alive without there being internet. We can always remember that stuff, but for the younger people. And so who thinks twice about, just go on the internet? I teach a class at Binghamton University, and as a part of the class that we teach, they have to write a paper. And it is very rare that as a part of it has to be a research paper, they're required to have at least 3 sources for the information in the report. It's very rare that I will get a paper with a bibliography that cites to a book, or anything that required them to actually go into the library and pull something off a shelf. The entire bibliography, and they're very authoritative sources. It would be the same thing that you could get at the library, but the bibliography always has www.something or other // whatever as the citation to the authority that they provide to me. So for our younger people, they don't think twice about, just going on the internet and getting the information, or buying this item, or doing this and doing that. And I would say it is a great thing. The internet is a great thing, but we have to be very careful. I'll just give you another, I've used this story before, but I'll use it again as another indication of what is available about us out there, in that one of the assignments at the very beginning of a semester I ask my students is, I don't tell them, other than my name, I tell them nothing. And I say, it would be easy for me to stand up here in front of you and say, okay, these are my credentials and why I'm here teaching this class. I said, but we're not doing that. What we're doing is, next class, you're going to come in and tell me who I am. And you will be astounded they come in the next class, invariably look at me a lot different than they did before we started, and be able to rattle off who I am, where I work, where I live, what my telephone number is, who my kids are, where my kids went to school, the things that they've accomplished, and the things that I've accomplished. So there is all types of information that it's out there. And we have to be very careful because a lot of that is personal information. And the more that someone has our personal information, the more likely it is that they can become us or take over us and go out and get loans in our name, get credit cards in our name, drain bank accounts, all these sorts of things that we have to be very careful about. Scam artists use our personal information to take out loans, to get credit cards in our name. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard. I refer to identity theft as the sexy fraud because it's the one we hear about all the time. It's on the news all the time. I could ask any one of you, tell me a recent event involving a identity theft. And you could probably pull up a story like that you've heard about within the last 2 weeks. For example, although this may not have been within the last 2 weeks, it was pretty close to the last 2 weeks, if not, is Target. Target, huge story, had millions of people had their personal information taken because somehow somebody got into the Target credit processing system where you swipe at the checkout and were able to get all kinds of information off people's cards. So it is out there. It is exploded. I have not heard to date of anyone that has been a victim of identity theft directly related to that breach of information, but it still that lends the possibility that it could be happening. You may never know again that it has affected your credit until later, because sometimes they'll get in and they'll sign up as you and send the bill to a different address, so you never know that it comes to begin with. Nobody will be calling you right off the bat necessarily, and before you know it, your credit can be ruined. So we have to protect ourselves. We have to do whatever we can do to keep our private information private. So some of the things that we do as far as getting credit is we don't give out any personal information to someone that we don't know unless we know who it is. Well, we want to know who it is we're giving it to, and we want to know why they need it. Now, obviously, if we're trying to apply for credit, somebody who wants to give us credit is going to want to know our personal information because they really have a hesitancy to loan money to someone who will not pay it back. They really want to know who's going to pay it back. So they want to check that. Credit is huge because as I'm seeing that many people want to get loans. They want to get loans quickly. The creditor wants to give us loans, but because of this, our economy that has the hit that we took back in 2008 through, they say it's starting to recover a little bit now. But I just was reading an article that it's still not opened up completely, but there's a little niche that's now occurring to where there are lenders out there that are lending money that are not conventional banks, that are loaning money at higher interest rates. And this article that I recently read was for small businesses who are still having a difficult time getting credit, are willing to pay 15% interest for a very short period of time. In fact, it was 30% interest because it was 15% interest for 6 months that they're willing to do to expand their business or whatever. And because of the expansion in business, it can offset the costs, and they're willing to do that. And there's this niche market there. And we see this happening with individuals as well. There are some individuals that are so strapped that they're getting these things called payday loans that are supposed to get you to your next payday. They are ostensibly illegal in New York, they're being given online. People are actually getting the money. So it might be $300, very small amounts, $300. But the interest rate is so high that it takes forever to pay it back, and people are paying back $1,500 to borrow $300. So they're illegal in New York because the interest rate is usurious. The Attorney General has come out and told people don't do this, but there are people out doing that. It is going to bind you for a extremely long time, and a word of advice, you really do not want to get caught up in that. The loans were typically coming from Indian reservations where they're not subject to the federal laws, and they're claiming that they are not subject to federal laws. And there's arguments that they may in fact be, but they're happening over the internet. So people have to be very careful about those sorts of things. Keep your information private. Keep your credit card information and your Social Security number information to yourself. Another way to protect yourself, this is a really, really good way to protect yourself, is that we are entitled to get a free copy of our credit reports every year from the 3 major credit reporting agencies, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. There are many different ways to do that. The easiest way, for those of you tech-savvy people, is on the internet, and it is not the guy with the cowboy hat and playing the song, the pirate playing the song. That's freecreditreport.com. That's not necessarily free. The credit report may be free, but the things that are attached to it may cost money. There is a site at annualcreditreport.com, and it's one word, annualcreditreport.com, that you can go on there. It's administered by the 3 major credit reporting agencies. I would recommend that you go on and ask for one credit report for one of the 3, and you wait 4 months and then go on and ask for the next one, and then wait another 4 months and go on and ask for another, and then you wait 4 months, and guess what happened? The year's up, so you can start over again. So you can actually get a free copy of your credit report once every 4 months, and I recommend that you do that. You can download it or copy it, print it off, and review it, and make sure that everything on there is yours. And if it's not, there'll be 800 numbers for the creditors that are listed there that you should call them and talk to them about getting that item removed. If it's not yours, it should come off. So it's free. Doesn't cost you anything. If you've been a victim of identity theft, you're entitled to a free copy of your credit report. You're also entitled to a free copy of your credit report if you've been rejected for credit for any particular reason. So keep those in mind, and those are ways to be proactive in protecting your identity and, in particular, your credit. The most important thing is, of course, when you print it off or you download it, that you actually review it and you don't just put it aside and say, I'll get to it later. I was just checking. They were saying I was just checking to see if that guy that was talking to us out at Cornell Cooperative Extension was really telling the truth. If I could really get a copy of my credit report, I don't care what's in it. Hey, I think it's really important that you care what's in it. And if, in fact, there is any unauthorized use of your credit cards, your exposure should be limited to a maximum of $50, provided that you take reasonable steps within a reasonable period of time to notify. So that adds another step to it. When you get your credit card bills and your bank statements, review them as soon as they come in, because the clock starts ticking. So make sure that you review them so that you can handle the problem. It also, these things have a tendency to fester, and so a credit problem doesn't just all of a sudden correct itself. So you want to get on it, be proactive, and take care of it right off the bat. So that's one of the areas where frauds are occurring, people stealing our credit information. So don't give out credit cards to somebody you don't know. Make sure you know who you're dealing with. If you're going online, which I use a lot to go online, you make sure you use reputable sites that you know that you want you want to reduce the probability that you are going to have a problem with your credit. It may happen. There may be something out of your control. Scam artists may get into Target and may steal information and may try. But if you stay on top of it, review your credit card bill as soon as it comes in. You might be able to pick up that charge. Credit card companies also, banks, are becoming much better. And with technology, it's also helped as well. I don't know if any of you out there have ever had a telephone call from your credit card company asking you if you ever made purchases in XYZ city when in fact you've never been to XYZ city, and they will immediately shut your card down. Because they have algorithms figured into their computer systems that, for example, if you buy gas with your credit card at a pay at the pump here in Ithaca, and 15 minutes later your credit card is used at some pay at the pump in Dallas, Texas, your card is probably going to get shut down because something's going on. I'll use an example. I probably have used this before for those of you out in TV land who have seen this before. But my wife and daughter, one of my daughters, were doing a Thelma and Louise as my daughter was relocating to Houston. So they packed up the car and jumped in the car and for 3 days did a mom and daughter trip through the country to go to Houston. And I think it was while they were on the trip, I was at work and I got a telephone call from my credit card company saying, have you been to a casino in Biloxi, I think, Mississippi? It was along the Mississippi somewhere. And I said, no. And I don't think my wife and daughter were stopping off at any of those things. And they said, well, it was a very small amount. It was it was under $20, I think, charge. And then there was another charge somewhere else near there for a small amount of money. And they were checking to see. And I said, no, that's not me. And they said, well, what about this charge? I said, yeah, that charge was me. He says, okay, it was on these particular dates just recently. And they said, we're shutting the card down and we will send you new cards with new numbers. So that was great. I thought that was a great thing that they had picked up that sort of thing. Somebody had gotten their hands on our credit card that probably my wife had been using along the way. And what they do, just for your information, when they get those numbers and they get that information, they have to test it to see if it's still good. So they'll test it at a place that usually does not involve any face-to-face contact. So they'll go to a pay at the pump, or they'll go to some other machine to see if they can get it authorized for use. And if they get it authorized for use, that's when they run down to Best Buy and start buying flat screen TVs and computers. And sometimes we'll try to return them and get the cash for them. So that's kind of how some of it works. There's many different ways to do that, but that's the kind of thing that we need to be careful of. So if we're looking at our credit card bills as they come in, we're more apt to be able to pick up that sort of thing quicker and say, hey, I didn't remove that. I didn't charge that. And there have been times where I'll see something on the credit card bill that it does not look familiar to me. And I'll call my credit card company and I'll say, hey, I didn't buy this. And they can tell you, may not be through your credit card company, maybe through the merchant itself that's listed on the credit, they can tell you exactly what was purchased. So you'll know. And there have been times where I call it didn't look familiar. I'll call and they'll say, do you have a daughter named so-and-so? Yes, I do. Well, it was sent to a girl by that name. And then I'll go, oh, that's right. They were away at college and they ordered their books online or something and it was shipped. So that'll trigger it. And they're very helpful. So I encourage you, if you see something on that credit card bill that does not appear to be something that you recall or anything, call and verify. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to say, oh, I'm silly. I had a senior moment that I wasn't at that store and I bought that or something. So it really is good to stay on top of those sorts of things. The most non-fraud issues that occur with consumers is they do not realize the cost associated with credit. They just don't realize. It's just, and for those of us who are fortunate to be able to pay our credit card bill off in its entirety every month, which I encourage anyone to do. Young people, get a credit card if you can. Get a credit card and have a very small balance on it and use it. But pay it off as soon as the bill comes. Don't buy it unless you can pay it off with cash right then. And periodically use the credit card, because one of the other problems that our younger people have is that it takes them a long time to get credit because they don't have a history. This way it'll assist them in getting a history. And so I encourage that it is not to be used randomly and just to whip it out and just pay things with it and just worry about the minimum payment. Because our young people who are not versed in finance don't understand the cost and, in some instances, the significant cost that is associated with credit. Many people, whether it's a credit card where they call those open-ended lines of credit, which means that it just never closes. You just keep adding to it and paying it off and adding to it and paying it off. As compared to closed-end credit where you just go out and get a $10,000 loan. It's closed. You're getting $10,000, that's it. You get it now, and then you have to pay it over a certain period of time, and then it'll be paid off when it is. So that's closed end because there's no more money. There's a finite end to it. Whereas open end, like a credit card, I've had credit cards for 20 years. What a lot of our unsophisticated people don't think about is the cost associated with it. The only thing they think about is the monthly payment. That's all I care about is the monthly payment. If I can afford the monthly payment, so be it. But we really have to focus more on those sorts of things. Credit is actually quite simple. Credit is simply a loan. When you buy things with a credit card, it's really a loan. You're getting a loan. What ends up happening is you have a credit card. You go to a merchant. You buy something. You use your credit card. That's a loan. What ends up happening is a bank pays the credit card or pays the merchant their money. You bought something for $50. The bank will pay the $50 and then you pay the bank back. So the bank loans you the money. There's a bank associated with your Visa, with your MasterCard, with your Target card, with whatever card. There's a bank associated with it, and you pay them back. So it's really just a loan. And there are three aspects to credit. One is the amount that you're borrowing. The second thing is the interest rate, which is the cost, the fee that you have to pay for borrowing that money. And the third thing is the length of time over which the debt has to be paid back. Those are three crucial elements of any loan, any credit that's received. And so our sole focus is, the monthly payment. I just pay that monthly payment. But there are many aspects to that, because your monthly payment can fluctuate based on those other factors. How much did you borrow? How long did you borrow it for? And what interest rate did you borrow it? And we just go blind to the elements of what the interest rate is and the length of the repayment. But we need to focus on that, because when you add up all your payments over the whole life of this loan, the amount that you pay back can be astronomical compared to that small amount of money that you borrowed in the first place. And our young people have to understand that instead of focusing on, actually my view is you should focus on the monthly payment, or in credit card situations, the minimum payment as a last resort. The thing you should focus on is how much am I borrowing and what are they charging me to borrow it? And that's the interest rate. The time element is, think about it. It's really kind of common sense. The longer you take to pay it back, the more money it's going to cost you over the whole length of the loan. Also, the higher the interest rate, the more you have to pay back. So it behooves us to have the lowest interest rate possible that we can get and pay it back over the shortest period of time that we can pay it. We're now seeing car loans that are stretching out to 10 years. You never heard of that 20 years ago. It was 3 years, then it stretched out to 5 years. Now it's quite common to stretch them out to 7 years, with some even being stretched out to 10 years. What that happens, young people, is the longer you spread it out, the smaller your payment is. But the more total payments that you make over the period of time. So we have to understand that. And I think the main thing to focus on is what my interest rate is and how much am I borrowing. Borrowing the minimum amount that you have to borrow to get through it at the lowest interest rate that you can possibly get. And then pay it off as soon as you can. Because most consumer loans that we receive, there is no prepayment penalty. So you can pay it off early without it. So I encourage people, even if you get a 7-year car loan, pay it off in 5. You will save thousands and thousands of dollars over the. Yeah, you may have to pay a little bit more each month, but you are saving thousands by paying over that little bit amount. So you have to understand in the loan situation, and let's talk about like just going to get a personal loan of $10,000. In some instances, you have to pay fees up front. There's these things called origination fees and I don't know, whatever else they call fees. But in a lot of instances, they're just prepaid interest. So you're paying the interest up front. There are minimum payments. Understand what that minimum payment is. How much will that minimum payment pay down that debt? How much of your monthly payment will go toward paying off the debt? Another typical installment loan fact is that your payments don't fluctuate. You just have to pay, you buy a car, you pay $235 a month. Okay? There's an interest component attached to that payment, and there's a principal portion attached to that payment. The more principal you pay on a loan, the sooner the debt gets eaten up, because the principal is the returning, giving them their $25,000. You borrow $25,000 at 6% interest. Part of your monthly payment goes toward that 6% interest, and part of that payment goes toward that $25,000. You want more of the money going, you want as much to go toward the $25,000 because then the 6% is calculated against a smaller balance. Consequently, your interest rate goes down, or the amount you pay in interest. And the way these things work out is that they say you have a 7-year car loan, $235 a month, and your payment doesn't change. What ends up happening is that when you make your first $235 payment, if you figure it out on $25,000 at 6% interest, out of the $235, $234 is interest, and $1 is principal. So your principal balance then goes down to $24,999. Well, the 6% is then calculated against the $24,999. So next month's payment, $233 is going toward interest because your interest went down because your principal went down. It's actually larger gaps than that, but that's the theory behind it. So it doesn't change. What ends up happening is at the very beginning of your payment, this much is interest and this much is principal. And what ends up happening as you go through the loan, it goes like this. To where at the end, Most of your payment is principal and very little is interest. So that's how they keep your payment the same over that length of time. The best thing that a person can do is periodically, in addition to making your $235 payment, pay $200 extra toward principal. Pay $200 extra toward principal. Pay $200 extra towards principal. And you do that as you go along, all of a sudden your 7-year loan is now a 5-year loan, and you will have saved thousands and thousands of dollars. So people have to be aware of those who extend credit make big bucks. They can make big bucks, especially when we were talking about those payday loans where the interest rates are astronomical. If you don't understand how the deal is going down, ask. I don't understand how you calculate this. You have the right, before you sign on the dotted line, to figure out what it is. Understand with credit cards, there is a minimum payment. The minimum payments have changed over the last 2 to 3 years, where it used to be if you paid $35 a month on that bill, you would never pay the balance off. Now there are federal rules that require that, one, the credit card statement you receive has to clearly explain and show you if you pay the minimum payment. First of all, the minimum payment's increased. They make it. It kind of made some people mad because they went from $35 a month minimum to $70 a month minimum, but it was actually for their benefit that it did that. But some people got upset with it. But it has to explain to you, if you pay this minimum payment, new minimum payment, let's say is $70, how long it will take you to pay this debt off. And you will look at it and go, wow, it's going to take me years to get this thing paid off. Also, thankfully, the new rules limit the ability of credit issuers to solicit our young people. It used to always be the minute one of the rites of passage to walking onto a college campus was all the promos that were there by the credit card companies saying, hey, get this t-shirt, get this towel, get this, get this, that. Sign up for a credit card with us. They can't do that anymore. They can't solicit people until, I think it's 21 now that they have to, that they can't. So there are certain restrictions. Applicants under the age of 21 must have an adult co-sign or show proof that they have income that provides them with the ability to repay those types of debts. So there's some protections out there. There's also, people have to understand with credit cards, there are frequently different interest rates that get charged on the credit card, and you got to be aware of it. For example, we always get this no interest credit card, join us, no interest. Well, those are introductory rates. And you have to understand how that works. It may be 0 interest for only a short period of time. It also may be only 0 interest on balance transfers, which means you take the balance that you owe on another credit card and use your credit card to pay that credit card off. And for 6 months, you'll have that 0 interest. So you have to understand, fine if you sign up for those sorts of things, but understand what it is. Also, those of us with credit cards, we have different interest rates depending on what they're for. In instances where there are balance transfers, you may have one interest rate, really low interest rate. But for new purchases, your interest rate might be higher. It's listed right on your bill, by the way. Then, who can tell me what's the highest interest rate associated to? Anybody know? Cash advances. Cash advances, which usually have really high interest rates attached with them. And it always used to be that, and this was a new change, it used to always be that when you made your monthly payment, it went toward the debt that was associated with the lowest interest rate. It's now reversed. So they have to apply it first toward the highest interest rated debt that's on that credit card, which is helpful at all. And then there's also some changes that were made as far as balances and that sort of thing. You know, it used to always be that if you got your credit card bill and you didn't pay the whole thing off, of course you have to pay interest. As long as you made the minimum payment, there was no penalty associated with it, but you had to pay interest. And then the next month you paid it off entirely. But when we paid it off, you pay it off, a week or two after you get the bill. So the new credit cycle has already started. So what would happen is you have to pay interest because you didn't pay it off in full last month. But then you paid it off in full this month. And then the next month that you get your bill, there was still interest added on because there were new purchases and all that stuff. Well, now it's in such a way that if you pay it off entirely, then you can't be double whacked for the interest. But these are all sorts of things that you have to understand as a consumer if you're going to use credit. So let's say we want to use credit, and we want to be able to get credit cards and get loans and things like that. How do we get it? Well, we go in and make an application. And how do we know if it's going to be extended to us? Well, the big thing is, falling back to our annualcreditreport.com, is that they check our credit. They check to see if you have good credit, so they will extend. It frequently is that only the people who don't need credit get the best credit. Kind of strange thinking. But that's the way that it works. If you can pay, they don't want to loan money to you if you're not going to pay it back. That makes sense. And so they want to check and make sure that you're a good credit risk, so they check your credit report. And we actually have a law in New York, not New York, it's a federal law. It applies in New York. And actually New York has its own individual law, but generally speaking, there's the federal law governs, and that is called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And so there has to be fair credit reporting to protect us. It's out there to protect our credit. And it's enacted as safeguards to keep as much of our information private. In other words, you don't want me just being able to go online and check your credit. My next door neighbor just moved in, and I'm going to see what they're really like. Let me check their credit. You can't do that. You cannot start searching people's credit. However, the law does allow for certain people to get our credit. And one is which would make sense is those who have received permission from us to get our credit can get our credit. And frequently when you go in to get a loan, you'll sign an authorization for them to check your credit. So anyone extending credit to us can get our credit report. We will typically get those pre-approved credit offers in the mail all the time. That was not done as a result of checking your individual credit. What typically happens in those situations is someone who wants to offer credit, I'll just grab, I don't know if they do this, I'm just going to grab a name, Discover card. And they want to send out a promotion to get you to get a Discover card. And they'll send you a promotion for a low introductory offer. Read the whole thing, and rather than just throw it immediately in the recycle, no, we don't throw it in the recycle bin, we destroy it. But before we do that, look at it. And you will see the little asterisk next to it is 0% offer. And you read down, and if you read the footnotes will usually say that it's subject to credit check and things like that. So what ended up happening is they usually will send to the credit reporting agencies the parameters. We would like to send this credit card promotion to people with incomes above a certain amount of money or credit, this kind of a credit score, whatever. And so you're lumped in with everybody else if you fall within that category, and you'll be solicited. But you in particular, they didn't check your credit report. But what they do is when you fill out the forms to send in to say, yeah, I want to use this offer, that's when they'll end up checking your credit report to make sure that you're going to be able to pay it back. So with your permission, they can get credit, or those who are extending credit can get it. Those who are trying to collect a debt, so if you owe, then a debt collector can check your credit. If you're going for a job, your employer could check your credit. Now the interesting thing is, and I don't know the answer to this, I'll have to check it sometime, is I think they can get your credit report when you're applying for a job. I don't think they can get your credit report if you're employed by them. So you don't have your employers checking your credit all the time. I don't think they're allowed to do that. I think it's someone who is going to extend employment to you. The bottom line is there must be a legitimate purpose for the solicitation of your credit information. That's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. If you get an adverse determination, somebody checks your credit and you don't get the credit, you get rejected, you have the right to get a free copy of your credit report. You will be given notice. Those of you who are out there that may have been rejected for a loan or a credit card, you'll receive a follow-up letter from the credit issuer to say, we haven't given you credit. Here's a way you can get a free copy of your credit report. You have the right to challenge under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You have the right to challenge any inaccurate information that's on your credit report. And what you do is notify the credit reporting agency. They're required to notify the other two of the three, but you can notify all three that there is information that is inaccurate on your credit report. Notify the creditor as well. And the credit reporting agency has 60 days to verify if that debt is a valid debt or not. And if it is not, then it must stay off. So let's get to the situation where you have credit, that you got into some circumstances and you can't pay it back, and then what ends up happening, you get the people calling you on the phone, and it's terrible. There's another law, federal law, called the Fair Debt Collection Act. We cannot be abused. As much as debt collectors would want to hawk us to get the money back, it can't rise to the level of abuse. The Fair Debt Collection Act, first of all, if you get a legitimate debt, you have the obligation to repay it. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You have the obligation to repay the debt. However, you have the right to not be subject to harassment and abuse in the repayment. There are some people out there that cannot repay. For some, they had a medical situation that just hit them, that they lost their job or out of work for some period of time and can't pay the thing back. They just can't do it. That's a fact of life. They understand, hopefully, that they have to pay it back, but they're not financially able to do so. And so the protections in the Fair Debt Collection Act are that you can only be contacted between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m., your time, not the time of the debt collector. They're calling you from California. It's still 9 p.m. Eastern time. They can't contact you at work if they know that it bothers your employer. And so if somebody were to be contacted at work, then they should notify and keep a record that they notified the debt collector. I notified them not to contact me at work. They cannot harass your neighbors. That was one classic way that they used to do it is, hey, get Joe Smith next door to pay his bills. They can't do that. It's against the law. The only reason they can contact third parties is to locate you. They cannot contact the third party person to notify them that you owe a debt. It's illegal to tell them the reason why they are calling. Oh, because he's a dirtbag and he needs to pay his bills. No, it's against the law to do that. They can't do that. They can't. So, if they know you and they know how to contact you, which I would encourage you to tell them, yeah, this is my address. This is my telephone number if you want them to call you. You're one of the exceptions if you want them to call you, but because they will call you from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m., although they can't be harassing. If it rises to the level of harassment, then they can't do that, but they can call you. If they know how to reach you, there is no reason to contact your relatives or your neighbors. And so I would encourage you to keep your credit, or you have a problem. You're out of work for a while. It's going to take you a little bit of time to get caught up. To notify your creditors and tell them that. And tell them this is how I can be reached. This is my address. Send me everything in writing. And there's no need for them, and it would be a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act to be calling other people because they know how to reach you. The other thing is that if you inform them that you do not want to be called, You should inform them in writing, because that's what the Fair Debt Collection Act says. You notify them in writing that you do not want to be contacted by telephone, that they can contact you by letter. They must cease calling you. So those annoying telephone calls that you would be receiving, you can stop. Otherwise, it would be a violation of law if they continued to call you. So notify them. If they call you and you say, I would say to them, I would make sure I have an address for them, because you need to do it in writing. But in addition to that, when they call you on the phone, you say to them, I do not want you calling me anymore. You may contact me in writing at my address. And they can give you a hard time about it. And they can say, well, we'll just sue you. Many people get upset about that. And they say, I'm going to get sued, I'm going to get sued. Let's sit back and think about that a second. You acknowledge that you owe the debt. You owe the debt. You just can't afford to pay it right now. So you owe the debt. So in actuality, if you don't pay it back in time, they have the right to sue you. So when they threaten you, say, we're going to sue you, well, they have that right to do that. My response to them would be, I understand that. I understand that you have that right, and go ahead and do that. I'm telling you that I'm unemployed right now and I have no income. So if you get a judgment against me, which you have every right to do, you'll never be able to collect it. So you do what you got to do, but I don't want you calling me anymore. And then follow it up in writing. Keep a copy for yourself that you have a record that you sent them that notice. And the calls will stop. You may still receive things in the mail. You may still get sued, which would be within their contractual right to do. But it will stop the abuse. And they cannot harass you. They can't lie to you. They can't say they're from the police agency. They can't say they're going to arrest you. And for those of you who get those calls, there's one of two things happening. One is it's an outright scam. You don't owe the money to begin with. You don't even owe that debt. We frequently see that in our office. People will get calls. This is so-and-so from XYZ Police Department, and we have agents in your neighborhood that are going to arrest you because you haven't paid off this debt. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, I'm going to get arrested. Well, I will tell you right off the bat, that is an outright scam. Completely outright scam. You say, how do you know that? You don't know the facts and circumstances. The reason why I know that is, for a debt that is owed, you cannot be arrested. It's not an arrestable offense. There are certain, bad check, if you're passing bad checks, that could be a crime or something. But if you got a loan and you got sick or something, you couldn't pay it back, that's not a crime. So you can't be arrested. So if somebody's threatening you with that, scam. Outright scam. Now, a lot of people get those calls and they never owed the money to begin with. So sit back a second, say, okay, I don't know about any debt that you're talking about. Send it to me in writing. Well, we're going to have somebody arrest you. Do what you got to do. Send it to me in writing. Nobody's down the street waiting to be, but people will call us and be very, very nervous and very, very upset. Our senior population, it happens to, and they get very upset about these sorts of things. So hopefully those of you out watching and those of you here today that know our senior population can spread that word. Say it's bogus. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. Hang up the phone. Don't do that. So they can't threaten you. They can't threaten you with violence. I'm going to come kick your butt. Scam, scam, scam. You can't, no threats. They cannot threaten you with anything that they have no intention of following through on. So I can tell you where that would occur is if you owe a credit card and you owe $75 and they say we're going to sue you, in all likelihood that's an idle threat because the expense associated with suing you is probably more than what they would end up collecting in the first place anyway. But they can't threaten you with something they're not going to do. If they know they're not going to be doing something and they say they're going to do it, that's a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act. They cannot imply that they are they're attorneys when they are not, or government officials when they are not. They can't say that they're police officers when they are not. They cannot send you notices that look like legal forms when in fact they are not legal forms to get you scared. None of those things. Any of those abuses should be reported to my office, the Attorney General's office. And in fact, if there are for the outright scams, there's nothing you can do about it because they're just scam artists. But if they're, I'll call it legitimate debt collectors that are in violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act, you have notified them in writing that you are not to be contacted by telephone, and they call you. You may actually have a private right of action against them. You could sue them. You may still owe the debt, but you could sue them, and they will be responsible to you for violating the Fair Debt Collection Act. The last thing I want to mention as we're finishing up here is there are out there many different credit repair companies trying to repair your credit that is bad, or these things called debt settlement companies that want to assist you in settling your debts. Be very, very wary of them. Very wary. There are certain rules in place under the Federal Trade Commission rules that limit the debt settlement companies from taking money from you up front in order to pay off your creditors. But you have to be very careful because the model always is, okay, for one monthly payment, we will take care of settling all of your debts for you. We'll contact your creditor. We will pay them off. And what was happening is you would make your monthly payment. You'd make a $583 a month payment, and you had 5 credit cards, and they're going to get paid off. What ended up happening was the debt settlement companies were taking that $500 and some a month you were paying and applying it right off the top to their fees. So the first 6 months of the payments that you made never went to one of your creditors. It just went to them. Then what they do is they accumulate a pool of money. And once you've accumulated a pool of money after however long, they will call your creditors and say, one at a time, and they'll say, okay, we can pay this debt off. You owe $10,000. We have a pool of money. We have $5,000. Will you take that in full satisfaction of the amount that's owed? And so then they may take it. Who knows? They don't have to take it. That's the important thing. So they settle that debt. Well, then you got that. Well, okay. While the money is being paid monthly, that first went to pay the debt settlement company, then the money that was then used to pay off the first debt, the 5th credit card company is sitting there going, where's my money? They're still calling you. Or they may sue you, and you can say, you call your debt settlement company, who you've paid fees to, and say, I just got a summons and complaint because credit card 5 just sued me. You know what the response is? Oh, that's too bad. We really feel bad for you. It doesn't stop the creditor who has the contractual right to collect their debt. So you're paying these fees. What I'm telling you, if you have the wherewithal, or if you have a friend or a family member who has the wherewithal, or an attorney who has the wherewithal to assist you, you can do all that yourself. If you are in a financial situation, the first thing I say to you, you owe the debt. I mean, you really do owe the debt. But if things have really piled up and you got behind the whole thing, you can contact your credit card company or whoever you owe the debts to and say, look, I'm unemployed now. I don't have the money. I can't pay you off. But I owe you, let's just grab a number. I owe you $1,000. And they will try to get you to do this when they're calling you dunning anyway. Go get a loan. Go to family members and get it from you. Say, look, you can check my credit report, and you'll see that my income, I've lost my job or I've been sick or whatever. I have all these medical bills on top. I'm willing to, that $1,000 debt, I'm willing today, through the help of my family, send you a check for $500 in full satisfaction of the bill. Now, if you do that and they agree to it, don't send the money until you get something in writing from them that they are willing to accept $500 in full satisfaction. Because you talk to them on the phone and they say, yeah, we'll take $500. What they're saying to you is, we'll take $500 now and you can pay us the rest later. What you're thinking is, I'll give you $500 and there's nothing later. You send them the $500 and then you get dunning notices down the road, and then you say, but I gave you the $500. Oh, no, you gave us $500 just to keep us current. Get it in writing. And if you can do that, maybe you can settle your debts. Be very careful. I encourage you that if you are in a credit situation where you have the problem, there are local consumer credit counseling agencies. Cornell Cooperative Extension can give you guidance and help and direct you to sources that could help you to try and assist you in bringing it. Don't be paying people upfront money to help resolve your debts for you. These things are sometimes on the radio or on the television. Hey, we can help you out. And they have real slick ads and things. Be very careful. It can be very, very expensive, and it may not be successful. So you have to be very careful. If you have any questions regarding credit issues or anything, I'd be glad to answer them. And if not, thank you very much. For those of you out in TV land, please join us. It's always much better when we have these lovely faces sitting in front of us when we're here. So thank you.
More information about this or any other consumer issue, please call the Consumer Helpline here at Cornell Cooperative Extension. Our number is 272-2292. We have staff and volunteers who are trained and who can offer unbiased, research-based information on this and a wealth of other consumer issues. If you'd like to join us live next time, we are here every month on the second Thursday of the month at Cornell Cooperative Extension. Our address is 615 Willow Avenue in Ithaca. We thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you again next time. In our next month's topic will be landowners' rights regarding oil and gas leases. And again, our programs are free and open to the public, and we hope to see you next month.